All right, here we go. Hello and good afternoon. I will turn off the music. All right, here we go. Good afternoon. Welcome to Applied Digital Studies, Section 1. This is Monday, the 15th of I almost said October. This is March. Good to see you all online and saying hello in Twitch and Discord. Make sure you're on whichever one you're watching in or whatever method you're using. Make sure you say hi if you don't mind so I can get a sense of who's out there. I do appreciate it, but I also use this as sort of informal roll call to kind of just make sure people are checking in. So if I haven't seen you check in for a while, then that would give me some reason for concern. But good to see you all saying hello anyway. So great. So today I posed the question earlier this morning whether Twitch or Zoom would be preferred, and the wasn't like a big number of responses, but the response from Amber in particular was pretty strong. So I just said, okay, I don't mind streaming. I don't know how organized this lecture will be, though. I have several things to talk about and show you, so I'm just going to go through them. But I do also want to talk with you about some of these things too, and hear your point of view about several of these things. So maybe we can do some more of that on Wednesday. I do think, as I always say, Twitch and Zoom both have pros and cons, so I don't mind either. But I also kind of figured I haven't used Twitch for a couple weeks, and so I might as well, right? So thanks, Amber. So anyway, so this is where we are. We are looking at AI and education, and I have a couple of different points of view I want to share about that. And I have some things to show you and see what you think about, really. But before I get too far into that, I'd also want to remind / tell you that the proposal is due. The big proposal is due today. So I hope you're done with that. I hope it's come together pretty well. I did kind of skim it just to see that there were submissions coming in, and there were. I'm not going to pull it up on this screen, but let me just check on my other screen. Hope that came together okay. Hope it came together well. I had a couple questions, and I was able to respond to a couple of them. I think a couple of you I didn't quite get to in terms of responding, but I'm sure it's fine anyway. I'm sure you're fine. The point of it being a proposal is that it's a conversation piece, like it's something that you've given me and that I can give you feedback on now. So that's the intention of the way that this is going to go. As I've said before about these aren't really like things I'm going to reject. Like I'm not going to say your proposal fails. I might have some feedback for you, but it would likely be trying to steer you in a different direction. So not direction, but revising your direction maybe, or enhancing it. I don't know what the right word is there, but it's going to be yes and kind of feedback. Like, this is a good idea, let's think about this other thing, or what about this? I do find that helpful sometimes, but in most cases, honestly, most people's proposals are quite thorough and strong if you follow the directions. So that should be good. And I got a chance to hear from many of you on Friday with your elevator talks, your elevator pitch versions of your projects. So I was able to confirm that you all are on the right track. So hopefully it was helpful. Got the bird cam going. There's a ton of activity during my second electronic literature class this morning, but not the first one. And so far, it's empty at the moment. So I guess stay tuned and see what happens there. They tend to come in groups, even though they're not the same species. It seemed like all of a sudden the wren and the sparrows and the cardinals showed up all kind of at the same time. We're all kind of fighting over it. It's kind of entertaining. But at the moment, they are somewhere else. But it's kind of interesting, watching the bird social life and kind of trying to figure out who's friends with who, because they seem to like get along with other species, and they seem to even hang out a little bit. So I'm not sure why. Anyway, so today, sorry, this class is not about birds. Just moving myself over here. Oh yeah, but speaking of wildlife, as I was discussing with some of you on Friday, fishing. I continue to try to figure out how to fish, or how to do fishing. We went Saturday and Sunday, different places, and still have caught nothing. So I don't know if we're doing something wrong, or just sort of not being patient enough. But we went out to Kasi Pond last night. Maybe we didn't spend long enough there. We spent maybe an hour. We went to the Rappahannock on Saturday, and still nothing. But we're gonna keep trying. I think it's still fun anyway, just kind of being out by the water, hanging out. And I saw a guy catch a fish yesterday. So at Kasi Pond, he had a trout with him. So Yeah, I think it's the time thing, honestly. I think it's just like we were there for only an hour, and that dude who had the trout looked like he'd been there all day, so maybe it took him all day to get that trout. Anyway, but, I mean, he's also one of these like old fisher guys, like old fisherman guys who he looked like. Anyway, he looked like someone who knew what he was doing. So maybe he had a better bait idea or something. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling a bit. Do any of you have questions about your proposal, or would you like for me to look at something related to your proposal right now? Obviously, this is a live stream, so you would have to essentially consent to having that appear on camera. But if you have any questions about it, I'd be happy to try to answer them right now, or we can just sort of wait until we're all on the same screen on Zoom, if you'd like. I did not think of that, Brandon, but that is possible. That's a good point, because I didn't actually see him pull it out of the water. I just saw him walking away with it. So maybe that would be pretty sneaky. All right. And I think actually when you do fishing a lot, you use other fish as bait. Like you catch one fish and then you cut it up and use the pieces for bait. So maybe that was part of the plan anyway. Okay, well, let's talk about other things then. So artificial intelligence and some things related to that. I do have a slideshow. It's not very long, but I'll go ahead and share it in case you'd like to see it. Put it in Discord. It's really not very long, so don't worry too much if you're on some other platform where you can't get to Discord easily. Bloodworms, yeah. Do you mean like the dry kind, or? Because I saw those and I got some. They're like fake maggots, which sounds even grosser than real maggots to me. But they smell really bad, so I thought the fish would like them, but they didn't yet. I saw the bloodworms on the same aisle, so maybe I'll get those too. Actually, we might have some bloodworms because we got some to try to feed our. We have a beta fish, and we got some bloodworms to try to feed her, but she didn't like them, so I don't know. But yes, I'll try the bloodworms. Hot dogs, actually, yesterday I used a chunk of hot dog, and I got a hit actually on it, and something ate the hot dog but didn't get hooked. So that was actually the closest I've got to catching a fish, which was not very close at all. I just saw the bobber go up, and then I reeled it in, and my bait was gone. So that's a good sign. At least it's a sign that I'm on the right track, I think. I'll keep you all updated. I'll let you know what we're able to catch. Okay, so let me pull this up so I can show you what I got going on here with the slideshow. So AI and education, artificial intelligence and education. So I actually have two different things I mean by this title. Okay, so bloodworms that bleed. I don't know why that's making me laugh. I just like that image. I think they are kind of juicy, so maybe it's in a little jar. I don't know. Anyway, AI and education. That's what we're talking about today. So I actually mean two different things by this, and what a great gift. Yeah. Two things that I mean by this, and the first I almost mean more or less poetically, but I think it actually informs the second one, which is probably more salient. In the first hand, I'm interested in the ways that when we talk about artificial intelligence and creating artificial intelligence and designing artificial intelligence applications to solve problems, this language of pedagogy shows up over and over again. I think there's a reason for that, but I think there are also some implications for that might actually give us a sort of backwards way into some of the problems or challenges faced by the second part of this, which is whenever we're actually using AI in the context of education. And what I mean by that, unfortunately, has very little to do with education per se, but rather more to do with the system of education and the system of schooling that you participate in as a student, which is both and is not. It is pedagogical and it also is not, right? It's not really about the teaching or the learning, but your participation in an educational system which may or may not be complicit. right? It is in the higher education sense. You don't have to be here. This is an elective educational program that you're in right now, obviously, but the in K through 12, you don't have a choice. You have to be enrolled in that. Anyway, that's getting ahead of myself a bit, but these are two different orientations that I'm interested in thinking about in the course of a few slides in the next few minutes here. So part one is metaphors. So if you recall, when we looked at Janelle Shane's book, You Look Like a Thing and I Love You, she introduced us to AI and gave us some pretty nice explanations of how machine learning actually works. And she talked about how there's two different kinds of programming in her view. There's the kind of top-down rule-based programming, which is what we've been doing in Python so far, or up until the most recent Python notebooks. And that's where you say, here's a series of steps for the computer to follow, and it does this, then this, then this. So that's one way of doing programming, top-down or rules-based programming. The other kind of programming is, like she describes here, more like teaching a child than programming a computer. And what you do in that case is you present a computer with a beginning situation of some sort and then an end situation that you want it to try to reach, and then it figures out the right steps it needs to follow in order to get to that end situation, which might have to do with classification or prediction or other kinds of things. But we call that machine learning because the machine is trying to find its own path. We're not telling it which path to follow. We are telling it where it's trying to get to, and then it finds the path on its own. And in that sense, Janelle Shane here is offering this idea that it is more like teaching a child than programming a computer. I think that's a nice and a convenient way to think about it, but I also think that whether or not this metaphor works for us depends on what we think happens when we teach a child and what we think is really going on with learning. I don't want to make too much of this from Janelle Shane's book because I think her book is excellent, and I think that this statement in this chapter from the book that we read, I think this statement's almost a throwaway line. But it also, I think, the bigger point that I think she's recognizing and referencing really is the fact that when we talk about doing things with technology that we call artificial intelligence, often we do have language of learning built into that, even though we don't really mean learning by that at all. So part of this, I think, goes back to a really important distinction that she makes, that lots of people make, that I've made when I initially created the idea or gave you all the idea of AI way back when, which seems like forever ago now. That when we talk about artificial intelligence, what comes to mind often is going to be things like HAL 9000, Lieutenant Commander Data, Agent Smith, Colossus, Terminator, and we named a whole bunch. If you remember, we came up with a whole bunch of different examples of AI in film and fiction. So those are so-called general AI. This acronym I just came across recently, but apparently it's a term of art that people use, which is good old-fashioned AI. And this is a kind of AI that does not exist, but our ideas about this AI inform the ways that we talk about and the purposes that we assign to actual AI, which is, by contrast, narrow AI. So these are real things over here. Machine learning on the right side here. Machine learning, predictive analytics, neural networks, generative adversarial networks. These are real computer applications that have been called artificial intelligence, and I think that's fine. I mean, that's the correct term of art for these kinds of things. But they are very different kinds of things than HAL 9000 and so on. So yeah, I think so. I think there's so Branda's question or comment on Twitch is that maybe I think you mean Janelle Shane, she's referring to something along the lines of constructivism theory. If you're referring to like the pedagogical idea, or even I guess it's a philosophical idea, I think you're right. I think that's probably true. Although I think what I was thinking of is probably when I implied that perhaps there are other ways to think about learning is like in teaching children. I don't know if we usually get that philosophical about it. Like we don't. It's not like so constructionism or constructivism is the idea that knowledge is something that's constructed socially, that it happens as a result of like a community constructing it, a community of learning, including the students and the teacher, and they work together to produce the learning. At least that's my very quick thumbnail version of that, which may be inaccurate, but that's my quick mental version of it. Whereas I think also teaching children can also be, people feel very differently about teaching children, especially younger children. Sometimes it's that idea of that construction idea. Sometimes it's more rote learning. I mean, that's still a learning model, even though most people disagree with it or don't like it. But the idea of rote or memorization-based learning, that is a kind of learning, a kind of teaching a child. It's a way of teaching a child. There's others. This is something, because we homeschool our kids, we talk about a lot, and my wife does. She reads a lot about it. the pedagogical philosophy that she follows has to do with treating the child like a person, and also presenting them with we call it the rich feast, like putting things in front of them, the knowledge in front of them, or things for them to learn, and then they kind of grab onto it. They pick up the things that they're interested in and that they want to learn more about. So it's more like they're finding the problems, or they're finding the questions. We're not giving them an end goal to work toward. We're just saying, here's a bunch of interesting stuff, and then they take some things and run with it. Other stuff they kind of move on. So you never know. But all that's to say, like, again, with Janelle Shane, this is almost more of a throwaway line, and I think the basic metaphor makes sense. But I'm interested in what else we can read into that, because I think when we talk about narrow AI and we talk about it using words like learning, like analysis, training, learning, heuristics, analysis, we're attributing a kind of agency or sentience or personhood to this technology that's totally unearned and inaccurate. Like it literally is not really learning these things. It's just a system that is capable of repeating certain kinds of things in a way that mimics what a student might in certain situations. So I think there's I think this is also sorry, I'm trying to find, I'm trying to remember where I put all these slides in this order here. I just started another book, and I might actually end up assigning a piece of it because I found it pretty interesting. It's called Artificial Unintelligence, which I don't really like the title of the book, but the author Meredith, where's it, Meredith or Melissa? I want to make sure I get her name right. Broussard is the name. Where is it? There it is. Meredith Broussard. Yeah. So she's writing about machine learning and the limitations of machine learning and so on. But she has this term techno-chauvinism to talk about the kind of overconfidence that certain technologists and people who use technology use to talk about and make assumptions about and predictions about technological solutions to problems that have social causes, or problems that are caused by people, but are allegedly or supposedly being solved by computers instead of being solved by people solving the people problem. Instead of solving the people problem, you present a technology solution to something that may not have been a problem in the first place. I don't know. All this is going back to this, like, which is that, and this is my kind of connection. I don't know if I can explain this very well, but I'm kind of thinking this way, that if we look at the idea of machine learning as a kind of pedagogy, and if we try to take that as pedagogy, then that also has an idea about what we expect of machines, but also has built into it an idea of what we expect from students and what we think of as the goal of learning. And I think it is very much the case that when we're talking about machine learning, predictive analytics, neural networks, especially when we're building systems that evolve using heuristics, in some ways, the ways that those evolve, the ways that we think of training those is very much not like what we expect from you as students. The kind of learning that I hope you participate and engage in this class is not the kind of learning that I subject a machine to, because I don't think of you as a machine, and I expect you don't think of yourself as a machine as well. And yet there are ways in which, as a participant in the system of education, you and I are both kind of inevitably acting as cogs in a machine of some sort, or a system of some sort. Man, I'm struggling over my consonants today. I'm not used to talking on Twitch for this long. It's a different kind of talking, I find, a different kind of, voice. Okay, so that was kind of part one, and I don't know if it totally makes sense. I feel like I need a diagram to really connect those dots here, because I'm trying to undermine, let me go back again. I'm trying to undermine both the idea that this is actually learning and the idea that learning actually works the way that it's being described in this quote, right? I'm not critiquing Janelle Shane at all. I like her book a lot. I'm just trying to say that there's more to both the idea of learning and to machine learning. All right, so in the context of actual educational technologies, I'm going to talk about something here, and I'm going to use this term, extractive technology. I got this term, or at least I first heard it from Chris Gilliard. I don't know if he coined the term, but Chris Gilliard is a researcher who talks about these things, and I've learned a lot from over the years. And he talks about extractive technology, or technology that takes something from its users. You can think of it in terms of things like Facebook and you've probably heard this cliche, or I hope you have. If not, I will share it with you now, which is that if you're using a product like Facebook and you're not paying for it, then you are the product. In other words, you're being sold. If they're not selling you the product, you are being sold to someone else by your use of the product, which is true, and I hope you know that. I use Facebook. I've not a whole lot, but I do use Facebook. I use Twitter. These are extractive technologies, which means that they take things from me technically with my consent, because I've agreed to the terms of service, but I don't observe every interaction or every piece of that. Your ability to exempt yourself from the kinds of extractive technology that I'm about to talk about is a little bit less clear, and so that's where it gets pretty iffy. And this is something that Chris Gilliard talks about a lot. This idea that as a student, you may be required to use technology that is extractive in some ways. So I'm curious to see what, this is where I hope we can have a conversation. Again, maybe on Wednesday or now if you feel like just dropping comments in Discord. But your experience of this, because you as a student in higher education are in some ways an expert on being educated, on being a student, right? I mean, you may have different ideas about your success or whatever your status as a student, but ultimately, like, you've been in classes a lot, and so you've had a lot of experience of different kinds of teaching and different kinds of systems, and you've got some perspective that's valuable here. Specifically, I imagine, or I think you've probably experienced different kinds of technological solutions that involve AI, and certainly many of these are extractive technologies as well. So, and I've used them. I mean, I try to talk about them when I do, but maybe I don't always think to, and maybe there are ways I should do that. I should do better, or should do other things. Anyway, let's talk about a couple examples. Proctorio. I am actually curious, and this would be interesting if you all were in person, but I am curious if you have used Proctorio, or if you know what it is. If not, I can show you. I think I can't show you, but I can at least give you some background on it. I don't see anyone typing, so okay. So I'll go ahead. All right. So this is a statement, and I'll show you where I got the statement from, but I'll read it first while it's in full screen. This is Proctorio, and this is a company that provides a product, and this is something they say about their product. They say Proctorio's live and fully automated remote proctoring service provides a scalable, cost-effective solution to ensure the total learning integrity of every assessment every time. Proctorio eliminates human error, bias, and much of the expense associated with remote proctoring, identity verification, and originality verification. So Pikachu's Heart is asking if I can show you what it does. I can't actually, because I don't want to. Not that I don't want to, but to show it to you, I would have to install it into Canvas, and I don't know if I should. Or I don't actually know if I can without paying for it or something. But I'll show you how it would work, I think. I think this is not the right tab. Where's the right tab? This is not the right tab. Where's the right tab? Okay, so this will work. Okay, so we'll get to Perusal in a second, but let's just, I can try it actually. We'll see what happens here. If I can do it without typing any, passwords or anything on here. So this is Canvas, and I'm showing you, this is our Canvas course. This is our class. And in Canvas, you probably don't ever see this. This is kind of a behind the scenes part of this. It has, if I go to the settings for the class, I have different things I can do, right? Details about the class and metadata, basic sort of configurations for the Canvas course. Canvas, I'm not going to show it to you because it would definitely reveal private information, but Canvas is itself using your data. But there are all these other tools that are being plugged in to Canvas that do different things. And so they add different features. So Perusal is one of those. Zoom is actually another one it's a plug-in to Canvas. So Zoom is a product that exists on its own, and then they have what's called an LTI, which lets them integrate with Canvas, which is what we've got set up for class. There's others. The attendance thing is actually an LTI, even though it looks like it's built into Canvas. Things like that. So Proctorio is here, and what this does, this is a secure exam proctor, and it allows, so the quote that I just read came from here, and what this does is it locks down your browser. So by employing, so these are, let's see. I'm trying to see if they'll actually just list their features, but you can turn them on and off, but you can record, lock down, and verify. Basically, the idea is remote proctoring. So the idea is you're logged into Canvas to take a quiz, and then Proctorio is somehow a layer in that experience. I'm not sure how it would actually look from a student's point of view, but you are essentially, it looks like I would have to get some information to do this. You are in a situation where you have to, like it locks down your browser so you can't open multiple tabs, for one thing. This idea is to prevent cheating, so you're not pulling up another tab with all the answers and you're just referring to that. It's designed to prevent stuff like that. The other thing it does, and this is where it gets tricky, right? So locking down a browser doesn't necessarily require AI, but one of the things it does is Proctorio, pretty sure Proctorio does this. If not, Respondus is another tool which does do this. Let me show you Respondus. Respondus is another one. Same deal. So again, I don't know for sure what Proctorio does, but what this does, what Respondus does, which is a similar tool, competitor tool, is this right here. It uses your webcam, so it not only makes sure that you don't tab over somewhere else, so it's not just recording your screen, it also is recording you visually and your environment. So it actually is paying attention to your face as you're taking the exam and your body language and things in the environment around you, and it is trying to look for and will flag things that it thinks are cheating. And so what it thinks are cheating is unclear, or how it decides something is cheating is unclear. If you remember when we talked about machine learning, this is an example of a black box situation because this is proprietary software, I believe. So how exactly it decides is something that would be a trade secret, I guess. But also just I imagine, is a machine learning, or I'm kind of assuming here, but I'm pretty sure it's a machine learning tool that doesn't kind of look at you and decide that, oh yeah, you look like a cheater. But it's looked at thousands of hours of people performing for it, basically, and it's been given probably been given two sets of data. Like one is a set of data of video where someone's not cheating. Another is a set of video where someone is cheating, and it's learned to distinguish between the two. And then there's it will flag potential evidence of cheating if what you're doing does something that matches something that it identified as a feature of cheating, right? So there's sort of a little background going on. So Marie Lynn has pointed out you can get around that. I'm probably, yeah. But like what it could do is, I don't know if you've done this, Marie Lynn, but if let's say like I was taking the quiz, and I kept and I have my phone right here with the answers, and I kept kind of looking down like that. That's the kind of thing it can flag. Like it keeps track of where your eyes are. So maybe there is a way around that. Like maybe you can sort of have the answers like on the wall behind it. I don't know, or like behind the webcam. But you shouldn't really be looking at the webcam. You should be looking at the screen, right? So it could probably check and see if you're looking over that way too. You can definitely track eye direction. Like that's something that machine vision can do pretty easily. So what it decides to do with that is the question. Yeah, it does. It should sound like an invasion of privacy. One of the other things you can require, and I think this is when it talks about the environment, what it asks you to do is, like, let's say you have a laptop, you have to, I have a laptop here. What it's saying is, like, you have to turn the laptop around the room so that it actually records your entire environment. So if you had, let's say, the answers taped to the wall, it would get picked up when you did that. So these are things that this software does. Now, I don't use the software, but I don't know. It's available in our Canvas environment, so it's possible that someone else at UMW does. Many schools actually now have a policy not to use this for reasons that you might be able to imagine. So gotta plug that laptop back in. And I think Proctorio does the same things. I've not used either product, so I don't know exactly what their list of features are, but that's kind of what it looks like. Let's just see what happens if I need to. Yeah, I probably need to get some stuff here. I mean, if you all are curious to see kind of what the back end of this looks like, I could see if I can install it just as a test and see what actually it does and what it doesn't do. I mean, I'd kind of like to know just for my own information. I definitely don't want to use it for real grading or anything, but I'm just kind of curious about it. But I probably have to, I might have to sign up for something. I'm going to try it on my other computer just to make sure it doesn't show anything it shouldn't. Yeah, it just shows, I don't know, it looks like I would need to get that key secret pair somewhere else. I don't think it's available within here. Yeah, so it looks like at Mars Girl, you've had experience with this directly. And you're right, they make you look it around. And you know, these are things that might not occur to you as, like, if you're the software designer, you're the engineer designing this program, and you're trying to decide, how do we make sure that this is a tool that ensures integrity? Like, how do we kind of appeal to integrity with this tool, or enforce integrity? That might seem like a reasonable thing to do, but I think that if you are the one holding your laptop and spinning around the room, you, I think, experience the vulnerability of that situation much more directly. In other words, it's a situation that for some reason people have a hard time empathizing with. And here's just this is a Twitter thread. I don't know this person, but I got retweeted a bunch of times back in September, just kind of describing Proctorio. So like we're talking about. So you have to show a picture of your photo ID, and then you spin it around the room and so on. And you know, these are things that you have a right to privacy over. You know, you have a right to the privacy of your room, even your dorm room. So, you know, these are things that I think should feel invasive. You should not feel like you have to disclose or share that space with the whole world, essentially, or with who knows, right? I mean, theoretically, your professor, but possibly also an engineer working for Proctorio, or, you know, a teaching assistant or whomever might see it. Pikachu's Heart, you're saying that you could just hide their notes on your laptop or something. Well, maybe not, because I think these also record your screen. So if it's on your screen, I think it would show up like that too. I don't know, right? Maybe it would work as a workaround. And I imagine if there are workarounds, then students who are in environments where they have to use this stuff probably find their ways around it. I think there's a couple of problems with this from an educational standpoint as well. Let me just show you one more thing related to this. Here it is. I think, no, where is it? This one? No. This one? No. This one? No. Just welcome to class. Where oh yeah, here it is. This is a lawsuit filed last week, and this is against Respondus. And if you'll note, I thought it was pretty, you know, hits on a lot of things we've been talking about in this class. So this is. This goes into some detail about what Respondus is doing as a product, and it kind of describes what Respondus is and how so essentially Respondus and Proctorio, they don't make judgments, they just flag things. So they send to the professor, here's a list of all the flags, and then the professor or the TA has to review those and decide if it makes sense to take action. So it describes that process here a little bit. But it notes here in this part of the lawsuit, facial detection technology is not perfect and can result in misidentification of certain races and classes of people, particularly those with dark skin, which is they're describing their plaintiff here. It's a John Doe, but he's described as a dark-skinned male, and so this is an example of the kind of thing that, if you remember from the Gender Shades Project, dark skin, especially dark skinned females or women, are likely to be misidentified, but just having darker skin at all might mean that your face isn't detected at all, which is something that we saw in that video. But here this I thought was pretty interesting. So I guess Ford, Heron, and Gibbs, these are the defendants, which is it's like the professor and the teaching assistants, I think. And so they're saying, basically, they're insisting that the plaintiff cheated, and they are not actually showing him they did not actually share the Respondus monitor's flag, like what it flagged. It is probably the case that they can't exactly point to what Respondus flagged. Respondus maybe probably just came up with like a red flag and said, "Flag, here's something you should look at." So I'm not sure exactly what they could have done differently there, maybe, but obviously I don't know the details of the case beyond this document. But this is, I think, a pretty chilling or telling statement here. Believing the computer program over plaintiff and ignoring his oral and documentary evidence to support his innocence, defendant's acts were arbitrary and capricious and denied plaintiff the process he was due for a disciplinary suspension. So this is talking about a student who was suspended or administratively withdrawn from school. So probably, the most severe kind of sanction you can get for an honor violation, to put it in our terms at UMW. And so he's basically saying that was a undue punishment, and he's suing the university over that. I mean, I don't know the details of the case, and I'm not a lawyer, but it certainly sounds like there's a case here. I don't know. There's probably questions about standing and stuff and evidentiary stuff. I don't know. But it's something that definitely illustrates that when I described Respondus and you all felt like that was kind of invasive, other people seem to think the same kinds of things, right? It's not just coming out of nowhere or being paranoid. It's something it is impacting people's lives in specific ways. So, okay, let me see if I can, what else was I going to show you all? Yeah, no, that's perusal. I guess, well, okay, so I have talked about perusal a little bit already, right? I mean, I actually probably belabored perusal with you all just to because I was really interested in it and just the ways that it works. And as I assured you all, I'm not really making any decisions or judgments about anyone based on what they do or do not do in perusal, so no worries about that. But I showed you all it does have these analytics, and so analytics, predictive analytics especially, are an example of machine learning, and these really aren't. I mean, this is just showing the distribution, but what it's distributing here, and sorry, trying not to show names here. What it's doing what it's distributing is its assessment, and its assessment is based on an algorithm that I don't think is ever explained. You can give weight to different aspects of the assignment, but the actual quality algorithm, there is a comment quality algorithm that Perusal uses, and I don't believe that that's disclosed, or at least I haven't been able to find that code anywhere. But it is kind of like the black box of the machine vision that Proctorio is using in that sense. I think there's lower stakes here. I think this is a different kind of, I mean, I certainly have lowered the stakes in terms of insisting to you that this is not something I'm grading, but just by the fact that it's dealing with text, and that seems like it's not the high stakes proctoring environment that Respondus and Proctorio are designed to work with. But anyway, perusal, it exists. The other thing I showed you all, I think, was the confusion report, which I think is kind of interesting. And that's something that gives a sense of the word and a sense of the topics or areas of the document that are generating the most confusion. And that actually was kind of interesting, certainly using machine learning. Okay, so I do want to show you one more example of kind of behind the scenes machine learning / predictive analytics that is involved in your experience as a student at UMW. And I'm going to hide this just for a second to make sure I don't accidentally click on the wrong tab here, which could reveal information. Okay, this is a good one. This tab is fine. Okay, let me turn that back on. So what we're looking at here is a tool called EAB, and EAB has several, well, EAB is the company, I think, but they have different tools within the company, and one of these is called Student Success Collaborative. And this is a institutional report, and so it's not reporting any individual data, but if you are a student who was enrolled between fall 2013 and fall 2018, that's as far forward as this data goes here, then your data is included in these charts, but it's all, of course, anonymized. And this does involve some predictive analytics, right? So remember, predictive analytics are when you analyze a bunch of data and then use that to make decisions or ideas about what's going to happen in the future. And the future that we're interested in here is success. So EAB is a tool that's meant to assist with advising, but this particular part of EAB, I think, also helps us think about curriculum planning and other things. So there is a use for this, right? I mean, I think, whereas for Respondus and Proctorio, I kind of have to imagine a use case for those. I'm not totally sure I get it. Here, definitely I can see the applications. And I'll even show you some of this data because it is sort of interesting. So it talks about and breaks down several courses which you may be familiar with, right? So like this one, DGSE 395. And some of these things, I'm not totally sure I get what these numbers are, but I think it's saying that of the people who took this between fall 2013 and fall 2018, 61.3% have graduated in that time frame. I think, right. So I don't think it's including people that maybe took it in fall 2018 but haven't graduated in like spring 2020. I don't think it would include those in this number. So it's saying that something like, I think if I understand this correctly, 60%, in other words, took this course in their senior year, basically, or the same year that they graduated, basically, if I understand correctly. Which sounds about right, just based on my anecdotal experience of having taught this class. Other things here, predictive course rank, and I don't totally get what that means, and then predictive cutoff grade and average grade. These are things a little bit more intuitive. So the average grade is like, what is the actual average grade that students graduate with, that they experience with this class, and it's 3.6 out of 4. So like that's a pretty high grade, which is, in other words, to say that most people who take this class end up with an A, actually. That's probably the most common grade, A or A minus. So that's good to know for you, hopefully. I hope that gives you some encouragement or whatever you're feeling right now. The predictive cutoff grade means that if you got a B minus at least in this class, then you had a good chance of graduating. If you did not, if you got something below a B minus in this class, then you would be at risk of not graduating on time. So that's the kind of prediction that might be helpful, or it might be kind of uncomfortable. And there's some others here too, like other numbers and cutoffs here that might be familiar to you, that you might relate to, or you might see in your own experience of these classes. To know kind of ahead of time your chances of graduating on time based on a set of factors that you weren't thinking of indicating that kind of thing could be sort of surprising, could be kind of uncomfortable. So I don't share this lightly. I feel like I want you to learn from it, but also I want you to see that these are the kinds of things that are going on already. Like, you are part of this system already, even though you probably didn't consent to this or even think of it in that sense. Not that you really needed to, right? I mean, because it's just the data that is there because you took classes, and it's just, this tool is just taking data that already exists in Banner and then drawing conclusions from it. So, it's just one of those things that are going on behind the scenes. I'll show you one. I think I can show you this. Yeah, I have a slide for this, so it's safe. This is something that shows up whenever I log into EAP. And remember, this is built for advising, and I've anonymized my screen here, obviously, because this does include people's names, and these are my advisees. And it gives me this little thing here, support needed to persist. This is actually factoring in quite a few more things than what you can see in this chart, but applying those factors to specific students and then generating this score about how much support they need in order to persist. So low is going to be, that's what you want to see. You want to see low support. In other words, you want to see that you're doing fine. If it's something other than low, then that's trying to tell me as the advisor, I might need to step in here and offer some support of some sort. That's the implication here of this metric. How it gets to know these things is not always clear. Sometimes it's because someone else flagged a student. Sometimes it's because midterm grade was unusually low or out of whack, or credits, or there's different factors, but it's somehow combining all those things to generate this score of high, moderate, or low. And I can actually review these and say, like, well, actually that I can see why it would show up as a high support needed, but actually I know what's going on there and it's not really a big deal, so I'm not really super worried about it. Or I could see one of these low ones and be like, actually that reminds me, I need to get in touch with that student. Like, I know what's going on with most of my students, so it just kind of adds to that, I suppose. There's a very similar tool which I don't want to show you, but in Canvas it also has Canvas gives me a 3-star rating for each of you, and that is its indication of how engaged you are with the class. And I can't really turn it off. You probably can't either, but it tells me how engaged it thinks you are out of 3 stars. Again, that's based on your grades, but also your time, how long it takes, like how much time you spend looking at the course in Canvas and how much time you spend on different pages. yeah, I have a whole view of those things which I can't show you without um, betraying your privacy, so I'm not going to. But it is interesting, right? But it's one of those things that, do we really need it? I don't know. All right, so AI in education. So I don't want this to be too negative. I feel like I am pretty negative about a lot of these things, and that is where I am for many of these things. But I do find it helpful in some cases, and I do think it is useful to know certain things that EAB, for example, points out that I may not have thought to look for, or that just kind of gives me a reminder to say, hey, this is something I should follow up on. I don't mind following up on things. This is part of what I do as an advisor, and that's all good. I guess going back to the issue with Proctorio, thinking about it in terms of solving a problem, the problem it's trying to solve is students are taking tests at home, they're cheating. Like, it kind of assumes that's what you do as a student, that you are a cheater. And so it's trying to throw up this really complicated barrier around you to ensure that you are not cheating. It takes as an assumption that you are a cheater, and it tries to prevent you from benefiting from that. And in doing that, it creates this barrier. It produces this structure, this canopy of surveillance in your home or in your dorm, and kind of puts you in that bubble in a way that you don't have an option to opt out of if you were in a class that uses these. And that, to me, goes to the heart of what's wrong with this kind of surveillance. I think the issues, I think they show up here as well, just in the language that Proctorio uses, the idea that it eliminates human error, bias, and much of the expense associated with remote proctoring. Okay, I don't know what the expenses are of remote proctoring. I imagine they are significant, but it's the kind of thing, I should admit, that is easy for me to be kind of distant about, I guess, in my critique, because I don't, in the courses I teach, the courses don't lend themselves to high stakes exams as the main way that I understand your success in the class. Other subjects, other disciplines, I think they have a different understanding of the role of testing. I don't find testing super valuable in terms of my teaching and the content and the learning that I hope goes on in my classes. But I also understand that for some disciplines, they think differently about that, and that's their prerogative. That said, I think that if you have a software tool claiming to eliminate bias, I think it's not. I think it's wrong. I think it's incorrect. And this goes into like the assumptions we've been talking about already a lot with AI and bias, and the fact that really it's just when we're talking about any kind of software solution to a human problem, we're talking about an opinion that has been hard-coded. To go back to Cathy O'Neill's great formulation of this, it's an opinion that's been formally expressed as a mathematical equation, and that's all it is. So of course it's going to be subject to bias and prejudice and all the other things that inform human opinion, because that's what it ultimately is. It's a human opinion. So I don't know. That's a bit of a soapbox, but I wanted to share some thoughts about AI and education. So anyway, just a couple minutes left. Do you have any questions about this or further? I mean, this will be better to talk about on Zoom perhaps, but if you have any anecdotes or any experience with these tools, I would certainly be interested in hearing what your experience has been. This is something that I obviously don't use Proctorio, so I don't know. Well, if you have any thoughts, go ahead and let me know in chat. Otherwise, I'll wrap it up. I'm just going to Google. I'm going to see if it's possible for me to set up Respondus just as a test to see how it works. But otherwise, this is it for class today. We're about at 2:30, so I'll wrap it up. And we'll be on Zoom on Wednesday and probably Friday as well, but definitely Wednesday so that we can chat about some things. But if you haven't already submitted your portfolio, please do as soon as you can. And if you have questions or issues related to that, please let me know so I can help. All right, so I'm going to do a little research here on Respondus, but otherwise, that's it for class. I'll see you all on Wednesday or sooner, perhaps. I don't know, but certainly on Wednesday for class. All right, I'm going to switch on the bird cam just in case something comes by.